he found a VHS tape labeled, "Do not watch after midnight." That sentence shouldn't have meant anything. A cheap attempt at being spooky, a novelty, a little joke from whoever wrote it. But the moment Ethan Marlowe picked up that tape in his uncle's attic, something inside his chest tightened. An instinct he didn't know he still had, as if something ancient whispered in the back of his skull, "Put it back." But he didn't. The tape felt wrong in his hand. Too heavy. Too cold. Almost metallic. He wiped dust from the label and felt a shiver crawl along his spine. The handwriting didn't look like it had been written all at once. Some letters were faded, others were darker, thick, overwritten. Like someone had retraced the warning multiple times over the years, as if terrified that future hands might ignore it. He forced a small laugh, nervous, forced, because the attic itself already felt like a scene from a horror movie, the kind of place where the dust hangs too thick and the silence has weight. His footsteps creaked across the old boards as if the house itself was whispering, "Leave it alone." But Ethan didn't listen. He tucked the tape under his arm and climbed down from the attic ladder. The air below felt warmer, lighter, until he saw Baxter, his dog, standing at the bottom of the stairs with his ears pinned back. The moment Baxter saw the tape, he backed away. Not barking, not whining, staring, as if Ethan had brought down something alive. "Hey, relax," Ethan said. "It's just a tape." But the dog didn't relax. He trembled, then growled, low, warning, primal. Ethan frowned. Nothing scared Baxter. Nothing. He shook it off and walked into the living room, the old CRT TV humming with static as he turned it on. The VCR clicked and whirred, a relic from another era. He checked the time. 9:43 p.m. Well before midnight. Plenty of time. He sat down, still holding the tape, feeling its unnatural chill seeping into his fingers. He shouldn't have put it in the VCR. He knew that later. But for now, he slid it in and pressed play. The TV cracked with static, violent, loud, hungry. For a few seconds, the screen was a storm of gray noise. Then an image slowly appeared. A basement. Concrete floor. Bare walls. A single light bulb swinging gently from the ceiling. The camera didn't move. No voice, no music. Nothing but that cold, empty basement. Ethan squinted. It wasn't his basement. Wasn't his uncle's basement either. It didn't look familiar at all. He leaned closer. At first, everything seemed still. Then, something shifted in the far left corner. A shape. A lump of darkness. Something that didn't look like it should have existed in any basement. Too tall to be a box, too uneven to be furniture. It sat hunched, almost crouched. Ethan felt his skin crawl. Just as he leaned forward, something warm breathed against his right ear. A whisper. "Don't wake it." He jerked around instantly. No one was there. His pulse hammered. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to turn back to the TV, only to see that the shape in the basement had changed. It had stretched, shifted, lifted itself into a new position. The light bulb overhead flickered, And in that flicker, Ethan saw something inside the shadow. A glimpse of teeth. Too many teeth. The screen glitched violently. Static. Distortion. And then the basement was gone. The image on the TV was now his living room. The same couch, the same TV, the same carpet. And Ethan himself sitting there. But the angle was wrong. The camera shooting this wasn't on the TV stand. It was higher up, like it was mounted onto the ceiling. Ethan froze. He slowly looked up. Nothing there, just the old ceiling fan spinning lazily. He turned back to the screen just as the version of himself on the tape leaned slightly forward. Then, with a trembling whisper, the future him said, "Don't turn around." His stomach dropped. His throat tightened. He felt air freeze in his lungs. The tape wasn't a recording of the present. It wasn't a recording of the past. It was about 5 seconds ahead of him. He knew he shouldn't turn around. Every cell in his body screamed not to. But fear is a strange thing. It sharpens curiosity. It twists logic. And Ethan turned. Slowly, carefully, expecting a figure, a monster, hands reaching out. But there was nothing. A rush of relief washed through him until Baxter barked from the bedroom, a single sharp sound of pure terror. Ethan bolted down the hallway. "Baxter?" He found the dog under the bed, shaking violently, crawling deeper into the shadows, as if trying to escape something in the room. But Baxter wasn't looking at Ethan. He was looking behind Ethan, straight at the doorway. Ethan spun around. Again, nothing. The hall was empty. But the air, it was freezing. It felt like someone had left a window open in the dead of winter. He backed out of the bedroom, returned to the living room, and stopped dead. The tape had changed again. Now the camera was outside, in the trees, watching his house from a hidden vantage point, filming his bedroom window, filming him. The footage zoomed in slowly, painfully slowly, as if controlled by a steady, inhuman hand. The window reflected something, a silhouette, a tall, twisted figure standing behind the version of Ethan on the screen. He gasped, and the screen went black. White text appeared. "Stop watching." He leapt forward and slammed the eject button. It didn't budge. He pressed harder. Nothing. The VCR whirred in protest, grinding like gears filled with bone dust. Another message appeared. "You shouldn't have turned around." A loud, heavy thud echoed from above, from the attic. He stared at the ceiling. The sound came again. Thud. Drag. Thud. Like something huge was crawling across the attic floor. His throat tightened. No, 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 no. He sprinted to the front door, grabbed the handle, and yanked. Locked. He unlocked it. Still locked. He tried the back door. Same thing. Windows. He smashed a chair into one. The glass cracked, and then healed right before his eyes. The house wasn't letting him out. He stumbled backward, his breathing ragged. The TV flickered again. A countdown appeared. 00:33:21. The timer beeped once. What does that mean? No answer. Instead, new text slid onto the screen. Find the second tape. His heart sank. Second tape? Where? He tore through the living room, pulling drawers open, flipping cushions, digging through shelves. Nothing. The timer ticked down. 00:32:17. 00:31:59. 00:31:11. Baxter suddenly barked and ran toward the hallway, scratching wildly at a wooden cabinet tucked beneath the stairs. Ethan rushed over, shoved the cabinet aside. Behind it, wedged into a hollow in the wall, was another VHS tape. Black. Unmarked except for a handwritten label. Do not let it see you. His mouth went dry. Let what see him? Before he could think, a noise creaked above him. Not from the attic, from the stairs. Slow, deliberate, unearthly. He turned his head inch by inch. A long, skeletal hand slid around the stair railing. The fingers were too thin, too long. The skin stretched, gray, taut like dried parchment. The fingers bent the wrong way, joints cracking in soft little pops. Another hand followed. Then a shadow. Tall, malformed, descending the stairs. He clutched the second tape, trembling. The TV flickered with a new line of text. Do not make a sound. Ethan covered his mouth, tears stinging his eyes as the creature took another step. The step creaked. Another. Creak. It exhaled, a slow rattling sound that froze the air. The temperature dropped instantly. His breath fogged. The monster whispered something in a broken, inhuman voice, not language, not anything from a human throat, a sound that felt too old and too wrong. The timer beeped softly behind him. 00:28:02. He knew what he had to do. He had to play the second tape. But the creature was almost at the bottom of the stairs. Ethan moved as silently as he could, slipping back toward the VCR, trying not to breathe, trying not to cry. He slid the second tape into the machine, and the moment it clicked inside, the thing on the stairs stopped moving. Its head, or what he assumed was its head, twisted sharply toward him with a crack like broken wood. Ethan pressed play. The room went black. The TV hissed, and the real nightmare began. He didn't sleep that night, not because he didn't try, but because every time his eyelids grew heavy, the whisper of something crawling inside the walls seemed to stir him back to consciousness. He kept replaying the VHS tape in his mind, especially the ending, when the camera recorded its own destruction. The cracks, the static, the distortion that almost seemed to twist into a pair of eyes staring directly at him. He couldn't make sense of it. No sane person could, and yet he felt the sickening pull of unfinished curiosity tightening around him like a rope. By morning, the sky outside his apartment had that pale gray tone that made everything look washed out and sleep-deprived, like the world itself needed coffee. He moved through his kitchen like a ghost, barely noticing the cold floor under his feet. He compulsively checked the basement door 5 times, each time reassuring himself that the deadbolt was still in place, even though he had no memory of locking it the night before. That door suddenly felt like the only thing separating him from something he didn't want to acknowledge. Something that had been waiting down there before he ever found the tape. He made coffee strong enough to wake a corpse, but by the time he took a sip, he realized he didn't even want it. His stomach was too twisted, his nerves too frayed. He kept glancing at the living room where the VCR sat plugged in, its small red light glowing like an unblinking mechanical eye. He knew he shouldn't play the tape again. He absolutely knew it. But the more he tried to avoid looking at it, the more he felt its presence like a thick fog wrapping around him. He forced himself to leave the apartment, thinking the cold air outside would clear his mind. But even the street felt wrong, too quiet, too empty, as if the world had decided to hold its breath. The neighbors weren't outside. No cars drove by. Even the dogs that usually barked non-stop were silent. And in that unnatural quiet, he felt something shift inside him. A pressure behind his eyes, like the beginning of a migraine, or a faint whisper saying, "Go back and watch it again." He shook his head violently, almost stumbling on the sidewalk. No, that wasn't happening. He wasn't going to let a piece of obsolete analog media control his thoughts. He wasn't insane. But the thought wouldn't leave him. It followed him like a shadow. By the time he reached the small grocery store at the corner, he was sweating through his shirt. He grabbed random items he didn't need, bread, canned soup, batteries, just to keep his hands busy. But every aisle seemed to echo back to him the same idea, the same lure. You missed something on the tape, something important. When he approached the cashier, the young woman behind the counter stiffened, her smile fading into uncertainty. She looked at him like he'd walked in covered in blood instead of exhaustion. "Rough night?" she asked, but her voice trembled slightly, like she wasn't sure if she wanted an answer. "Something like that," he muttered. But then her expression shifted. Her eyes widened, not in concern, but in recognition. "I've seen you before," she whispered, her gaze drifting toward the security monitors above them. He followed her stare. One monitor showed the parking lot, another showed the snack aisle, a third showed the counter, but the fourth, he felt his chest tighten when he saw it. It showed his apartment building hallway. Not the store, not the street outside. His hallway. Dark, empty, lit only by the flickering bulb that had been dying for months. "How?" he tried to speak, but the words got stuck in his throat. The cashier looked confused. "That camera, it popped up on the monitor this morning. I thought it was some glitch, but that's your place, isn't it?" He didn't answer because he didn't know how to answer. The camera flickered, static crackling across the screen, and for a moment he saw movement, a shape, something standing just out of the camera's reach, like a shadow leaning into the darkness to avoid being fully seen. He stepped backward, nearly knocking over a display of potato chips. The cashier gasped as the figure on the monitor seemed to inch closer to the lens, but still not revealing itself fully. Just a suggestion of limbs, wrong proportions, head tilted at an unnatural angle. He didn't wait to see more. He ran out of the store, groceries forgotten, breath burning his lungs as he sprinted back home. When he reached his building, he stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring at the hallway he had just seen on the screen. It looked almost identical. Same sickly flickering light, same peeling wallpaper. But there was no shadow figure, no presence. At least, not that he could see. His keys trembled in his hand as he unlocked the apartment. The moment he stepped inside, he felt the air heavier, thicker, as if something had been waiting. But the apartment looked the same. Everything in place, everything normal, except the VCR. Still plugged in, still glowing faintly, still calling to him. He swallowed hard. He didn't want to press play,
but a cold realization settled over him. If something was watching him through cameras, interacting with his world, bleeding into the present, then the tape wasn't just a recording. It was a doorway. He approached the VCR with slow, measured steps, like someone approaching a dangerous animal. The tape still sat inside the machine. His thumb hovered over the play button. For several long seconds, all he could hear was his own heartbeat hammering inside his chest. He pressed it. Static. Then the basement again. The same flickering light, the same disjointed camera angles. But this time, something was different. The breathing. He hadn't noticed it before, or maybe it hadn't been there yet. But now, deep in the static, he could hear a low rasp, slow, wet, like something breathing through a throat filled with mucus. The camera panned shakily, as if controlled by trembling hands. This time, the lens pointed toward the far corner of the basement, the part he hadn't been able to make out clearly before. He leaned closer to the screen. The breathing grew louder. The image sharpened for just a second, and he saw it. A figure crouched in the darkest corner, limbs twisted like broken branches, head cocked to the side, long strands of hair hanging in clumps. It wasn't facing the camera, it wasn't moving, it was just there, like it had grown from the concrete itself. Then, slowly, the figure began to turn its head. He recoiled, bumping into his own couch, but the tape didn't freeze. The figure continued rotating its head far past what a human neck should allow until it faced the camera directly. Its face, if it was a face, looked wrong, too long, too stretched, like skin pulled over something that didn't fit beneath it. He wanted to press stop. He wanted to run, but he couldn't move. Because the figure on the tape started to speak. Not with normal sound, not with any human voice. Its words came through the static, distorted, and sharp enough to feel like they were being whispered directly into his bones.
I can see you. His blood turned to ice. The figure leaned closer to the camera on the screen, and I know you can see me. He stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. The room plunged into dim light, the shadows seeming to pulse with the static on the TV. The tape wasn't paused. It wasn't glitched. It was responding. You shouldn't have watched again, the voice hissed, the audio warping. Now the walls are thinner. He felt the cold brush of air behind him, the same unnatural chill that came from the basement door. The figure on the screen smiled, a slow, skin-stretching, tearing smile. You opened the way. The static deepened, the screen shook. The breathing on the tape now came from the room itself, from behind him, from inside the walls, from everywhere. And now, the voice whispered, I'm coming through. The TV began to distort violently, the image warping into blurs of black limbs, open mouths, hollow eyes. And then, underneath the noise, he heard a sound that made every hair on his body rise. The sound of wood splintering, the sound of a door opening. Not the TV's door, not the basement door downstairs, the door inside his apartment. The closet. He hadn't touched it in weeks. He wasn't even sure if it was locked. But as the tape's audio grew unbearable, he heard the faint creak of its hinges behind him. The creature on the screen lifted a finger and pointed forward, pointed through the glass, through the static, through the screen, pointed directly at him. "Don't turn around," it whispered. The closet door slowly opened wider. He could hear something slipping out, limbs brushing wood, nails dragging the floor. The tape's audio twisted violently, and the creature's voice screamed through the static. "If you turn around, it becomes real." He froze, breathing shallow, heart pounding loud enough to drown out the static. And behind him, inches away, something exhaled, slowly, deliberately, waiting for him to turn, waiting to become real. He stood frozen in the middle of his living room, muscles locked, breath held tight in his chest, because the thing behind him, whatever had crawled out of that closet, was close enough that he could feel the cold of it leaning into the back of his neck. His instinct screamed at him to look, to confirm, to understand what had stepped into his world. But the creature on the tape had warned him. If he turned around, it would become real. But wasn't it already real? Something was breathing behind him, something heavy, wet, and uneven. He could hear its weight shift on the floorboards. He could feel its presence like a static charge against his skin. Every second stretched longer, thick enough to suffocate. The room buzzed faintly, the TV still hissing with warped audio. The figure on the screen was motionless now, its head tilted and its stretched smile frozen. It wasn't speaking anymore. It didn't need to. It was waiting too. The creature behind him inhaled again, slower this time. Curious, investigating him like an animal deciding whether to strike or observe. He clenched his fists so tight his nails dug into his palms. The air felt syrup thick. His heart thudded violently, like it wanted to escape his ribs before something else did it for him. He whispered, barely audible, "What do you want?" The thing behind him shifted again, and he heard something like the sound of fingers dragging lightly across wood, but not straightened fingers. They sounded long, curved, jointed too many times. The scrape was gentle, almost exploratory. He felt those same fingers brush the back of his shirt. He nearly screamed, but his throat locked up. His vision blurred around the edges, darkening, his instincts tearing him in two. One part of him wanted to run, to slam into the wall if it meant putting distance between him and the thing. Another part, deeper, primal, knew that sudden movement might be the final invitation the creature needed. The TV flickered. The figure on the tape lifted its head again. Its voice returned in a soft, serrated whisper. "Stillness keeps you alive." His knees shook. His breathing grew shallow and quick. Sweat dripped down his back despite the freezing air. The creature behind him leaned closer, its breath brushing the hair behind his ear. The exhale was so cold it burned. He felt something else too, something tapping at the back of his neck. Not a finger, something small, sharp and thin, like the tip of a joint clicking against his skin. Tap, tap, tap. The thing was feeling the shape of him, mapping him, learning him. His instinct to flee roared inside him, but he held still. Every muscle vibrated with the effort. He felt tears sting his eyes, but he didn't blink. Then the creature behind him exhaled again, this time more forcefully, and he heard the faintest sound, like a shape unfolding, like a body stretching after being cramped in too small a space. He imagined limbs rearranging, bones creaking, skin shifting into a new, terrible shape. He squeezed his eyes shut. "Please," he whispered, "go back." The TV responded instead of the creature.
The figure on the tape lifted its head now that its stretched face filled the screen. It won't go back. Not now. Not anymore. Static surged across the screen, but the voice cut through the distortion with razor clarity. You let it listen. His breath hitched. Listen to what? To you, to your fear, to your shape, to the rhythm of your heartbeat. The creature behind him made a low sound, not quite a growl, not quite a moan, something between hunger and recognition. He felt the floorboards vibrate under its shifting weight. His voice cracked. What does it want?
The figure on the screen smiled wider, impossibly wide. It wants to fit, it hissed. It wants to wear. Something seized his shoulder. He cried out before he could stop himself. The grip was cold, bony, and far too strong. The moment he made noise, the creature reacted. Its grip tightened. Its breath quickened. It was excited. The TV flickered violently, the static sharpening like knives. Don't look, the voice warned. If you look, you become its mirror. But he realized something horrifying in that instant. The creature wasn't just touching him. It was shaping him. The hand on his shoulder began tracing along his collarbone, not gently, calculatingly. It dragged its two long fingers across him as if comparing, measuring, learning the distance between his bones. The cold seeped through him. He felt his breath fog, even though the room wasn't cold enough for that. He couldn't take it anymore. He jerked forward. The creature's claws scraped his shirt but didn't fully grab hold. He fell to his knees, scrambling away across the floor, desperate to reach the front door, the window, anywhere. Behind him, he heard a long, high-pitched scraping sound, like limbs pulling across the hardwood too quickly. He didn't dare look back. He dove toward the hallway, sprinting despite the dizziness, but the moment he reached the door, he felt the air around him shift. The temperature dropped further. The lights dimmed. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, the walls narrowing like a throat closing around him. He reached for the doorknob. He never touched it. A hand. No, not a hand. Something cold and thin wrapped around his ankle and yanked. His body slammed onto the floor so hard the air shot out of his lungs. Pain flashed white behind his eyes. He tried to kick, but whatever was holding him had too many joints, too many angles. Its grip tightened until he felt pressure against the bone. The TV shrieked. Not with audio, not with speech, with a scream. Human, but twisted by analog distortion. Don't let it touch your face. He clawed at the floor, dragging himself forward, but the creature behind him pulled harder. He felt himself being dragged back toward the living room, toward the tape, toward the doorway between its world and his. No, he gasped, fighting until he felt his nails bend painfully. Let me go! The creature's hold shifted. It wasn't grabbing his ankle anymore. It was climbing him. He felt a cold limb slide up my calf, another gripping my thigh, another wrapping around my hip.
Too many limbs. Far too many. He could feel each one repositioning, aligning itself with his body, tracing the outline of him like it was preparing to overlay itself on top of him. He whimpered, trembling. Please stop. Please. The TV cracked violently, the screen splitting down the center. The figure on the tape forced its face into that crack, pressing through the broken glass as if the screen was soft clay. Static bled out of the opening, filling the room with a choking buzz. You must close the doorway. Break the tape. The creature behind him froze. only for a moment, but enough. He lunged forward, dragging himself toward the VCR. His fingers slipped on the carpet. The creature hissed behind him, furious, scrambling after him with frantic, disjointed movements. He reached the VCR. He grabbed the tape. The creature shrieked, a metallic, inhuman scream that rattled the walls. He lifted the VHS, and he slammed it into the floor, shattering the plastic casing in one brutal strike. The tape inside unraveled like a dying serpent curling across the carpet. The creature's shriek rose into a deafening pitch. The lights exploded. The TV burst in a shower of sparks. The room tilted as if gravity itself was malfunctioning. The creature let go of him instantly. He curled into himself, covering his ears as the world dissolved into static, light, and shadow. And then, silence. When he finally opened his eyes, the room was still. The air was normal. The lights were dim but unbroken. No cold, no static, no creature. Just silence. The tape lay destroyed at his feet. He stood shakily, his whole body trembling, his mind struggling to accept what had happened. He checked the closet. Empty. He checked behind the couch. Nothing. He checked every corner of the apartment. Nothing there. But when he approached the door to leave, he paused. On the inside of the door, something had been written. Not with a marker, not with paint, but with scratches. Deep, vicious scratches carved into the wood. 4 words. Deep enough to expose splinters. Deep enough to bleed. It remembers your shape. He stumbled back, the words drilling into him, cold terror blooming fresh in his chest. His hand shook, his breath turned uneven. He looked at the shattered tape on the floor. He looked at the scratched door. And in the reflection of the dark, blank TV screen, he saw something behind him. Not clearly, just a shape, a shadow, a silhouette, standing too close, still learning him, still fitting itself to him, still wearing him. And it whispered one final thing so softly, he wasn't sure if it came from his mind or the air itself. Next time, don't run.